yarn lovers, it's Gary and I'm coming to you from my happy place, the Yarn Corner here on Vancouver Island in Canada. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a balmy Tuesday night, August the 30th, 2023, and this is video number 197. How are you all doing? I hope you're well and staying safe. It's been a while, maybe 3 weeks since I did one of these catch-ups on showing my works in progress and my finished objects that I have made with yarn crafts. So I hope that you'll enjoy the next little while I catch you up on those things. As well as towards the end of the video, I'll be catching up on things that I've been doing in the month of August in the community that me and my husband Chad live in, along with our little puppy. She's six months old almost, and her name is Pixel. So just to catch you up on all the festivities that we've been joining in on, and those have included some festivals as well as parades, as well as having some guests from out of town stay with us, and we've showcased the beautiful scenery around nature walks and hiking and all of those wonderful things. All those clips will be towards the end of the video, and you'll be able to see some snippets of Pixel as well. So I've got some of those to share with you. So let's get cracking. But before I do, I should talk to you about what Hank is wearing. Hank is wearing a crocheted pattern that I created called the Festive Dragon Wrap. And I've put this on Hank because one of my viewers have shared with me some really great news. She took the recipe that I had created for this pattern. It's actually not a pattern because I never got it tested or anything, but I just wrote some notes down and shared it amongst my viewers and friends. And so I just want to congratulate Alicia for getting a ribbon prize placement in her craft fair when she had made up her own Festive Dragon Wrap. So congratulations on that. I saw the photograph that she shared with me, and it's absolutely beautiful, wonderful colors that she chose, but I didn't get permission to show the photograph, so I just want to say a heartfelt congratulations. I'm always so beside myself with excitement when people who have taken a pattern or make a comment about like how they've gotten some inspiration from a video or a work that I've made, some yarn that I've spoke about. So those interactions really keep me going, and it makes me excited to create these videos because I still get butterflies when I'm in front of my phone, talking in an empty room. So it always strikes me as quite odd, but here I am, and I just appreciate all of the communications that everyone has with me, either through emails. My email address is down below if you want to share any thoughts with me or if you want to share work. And I really value all of that interaction. So thank you so much for all of the people who reach out in the comment section of this video, or if they're also like sending me an email or an Instagram message. So thank you. So let's start looking at some of the work that I have to show in this episode, starting with my one and only finished object. And it's this knitted shawl here from Stephen West's Dotted Rays pattern. I absolutely loved working on this. It was, I'm going to say, a adventurous beginner standard kind of level. You're learning a few things. If you know how to do garter, you'll be learning how to do the short rows. So you knit to a certain point and then you turn your work and knit back before finishing the entire row. So that's a learn if you're a beginner. Also, the I-cord bind off edge is something new, as well as the yarn overs. So you'll learn a few things if you're just a new beginner at knitting. And I would say that this is for the adventurous knitter. This is where it starts in here, where it starts from a I-cord cast on. And as you can tell, that this part is not very stretched, or it's not very worked in the same amount as the rest of the garment here. Let's talk about the width of it. It is probably my wingspan, that's 5'8", and the depth of it is probably 24 to 28 inches in the depth there. I used 3 different types of yarn. I would have loved to have had enough of the one yarn that I could just use the 2, but I played yarn chicken and lost, and I lost out by about 10 grams. So I had to substitute with a different color, and that color is just along the edge here towards the finish of the work. You might see a slightly greener, yellow green kind of ending there, which I think is fine. It looks like it fades well with this jade color here, and I absolutely love it. So let's talk about the yarn and that I used, as well as the needles, and I'll just wear it so that we can see how it drapes. It hasn't been blocked yet, so it does have room to grow and room to open up, so it'll be a little bit more drapier when I block it. But yeah, I absolutely love it. So this jade color that I've mentioned a few times is Knit Picks Hawthorn fingering weight yarn. I believe it's a kettle dyed colorway, and it's called Poseidon. I had 2 100 grams of that color, and I used every ounce of it, and I needed around another 10 grams more, but I substituted the edging with a Tosh yarn, and it's called Herbology. So that is it. It's fingering Tosh yarn merino, and it's a single ply yarn. So I added that to just the edging there, and I thought that looked like a nice complement, like almost like in the same family range, and slightly gives the tint on the edge just a nice faded weathered quality look. The needles that I used were Chagu bamboo needles, these ones here, and I believe it is the 4mm. Yes, I've got my notes here. 4mm, and I used the fixed cable, and I believe this is probably around 32-inch cable, and that was fine for the mid-range size. So Stephen West with the dotted rays gives you 2 sizes to work on. One is the smaller, and the other one is a larger size, which uses a lot more yarn, and it gets really big too. So I was happy with the small, and then I had enough yarn left over to do 1 extra wedge. So the beauty of this pattern is that you can choose to end the pattern wherever you like. The suggestion is to end on a row that has the yarn overs here, and then you need probably, I'm going to say, depending on whether you're doing the large or the small, but for me, I did 1 extra from the small, and I needed probably around 5 grams of yarn for the bind off. So yeah, so I thought it was a really fun make, and I can see myself doing a lot more with this style of design. The book that I used was called West Knits Best Knits, and it's volume number 1, Shawls, that one there. So in the book, it gives you some suggestions and color inspirations on whether you want to do a solid color, whether you want to band like I have with another color yarn, or if you want to do scrappy project where you've got like 1 color per wedge, and then you can alternate with different colors per each of these slices that are made with this lighter color here, or the eyelet rose. Yeah, the last and final color that I used in this make, which I forgot to mention, was the special ingredient here. It was a gifted yarn from my good friend Penny Bolton, and she sent me this hand-dyed yarn that she had dyed up herself, and it is on this Stellina Stroll. I think it's called Glimmer, and it's a fingering weight. The colors that she had chosen are these kind of limeish greens to yellow, and there's sort of like a little aqua green in there as well, slight dashes of that, but it shimmers with this stellina in it. I think it might be stellina, or it might be latex or something that sort of has that sparkle. Absolutely a lovely yarn. If anything, this one was a lot softer than the hawthorn yarn, and it did have a lot more spring to it. It is a yarn that is a smoother twist, whereas the hawthorn yarn has more of a coarser twist that you can see more of your knit stitches in a kind of more rustic way. The softness to this one is, I'm going to give it like a 4.5 out of 5. So it's very soft against your skin, whereas the hawthorn would be more of a 3.75 or 3.5 out of 5 for softness. It does soften up more in the wash. So yeah, actually I got the little label here for that hand dyed here. It's called Stroll Glimmer, and it's a fingering weight. That's it there. Oops. It's alive. It's alive. There we go. Yeah. So I'm going to have to take this off because it is quite warm. But I really enjoyed it. I think I might do another one because I have lots of scraps that are good chunks that I can figure out which sizes would work for which wedge, and then use up those balls that are left over as well. So I'll put that one aside. Now we move on to works in progress. I'm going to show you something that I have just started probably around 2 weeks ago, on and off, been working on this. And it's a repeat design that I had worked once before on and finished the shawl pattern, loved it so much, and always had in the back of my mind that I would use one of the Stanley cakes to crochet up this a second time. So this is it here. Look at those beautiful textures and colors. So this is the pattern called Laconi, and it is by Claudia Ramprich, and I absolutely love her crocheted patterns. They're delightful to work with. The pattern, the way it's written, it's generally, not to all of them, but the ones that I've actually worked on, I've worked on 3 of her patterns, are done, written up to explain half of the pattern, and then you mirror it from memory to complete the row. So that's how I've been familiarized with her patterns so far with the 3 that I've done. There's also a chart that you can run off as well if you prefer looking at a chart. She has those drawn up too. But I'm absolutely loving all the different textures. I would say that I'm maybe a little over a third of the way done, because the rows now are getting quite long and it takes me a while to complete each of the sections. But if you're looking for interesting crochet where you're doing some fillet stitches and then doing some bubble stitches, then doing some post stitches, this is a great pattern for you. It's called the Laconi. It is a paid for pattern, and all the patterns that I mention or publications will be down in the description box below, so you can, as you wish, use the links to get there for ease of access. And the yarn that I'm using is a Stanley cake. Now, Stanley is a brand of yarn that you can purchase, I think, in a few vending places, but the one that I'm familiar with is called Pleta Yarns, and it's in Bulgaria. And they have such beautiful yarn choices to choose from. Lots of them are beautiful colors that gradate. Some of them are textural yarns as well. And I purchased a few of them in one of my purchases that I made. Actually, I made 2 of them from the company Pleta. And this one that I'm using is called Muffin Fresh, and that's the label there. And It is 100% acrylic, it says here, and this ball has 2,000 meters. I've already gone through like a yellow green, and then this sky blue moving into this more khaki or olive green, and then it will go orange red. Now, I don't think I'll be able to use up all of this cake, because from memory it only needed to be 1,200 meters for the previous one that I did. So I'm probably going to end somewhere in the orange, and then I'll have all this red left over. I may try and lengthen it myself, where I can add in one more repeat of the fillet and then another bubble set, and see whether I can get to the red as well. But that's going to be a challenge for me, because I've noticed that in each of the sets, the bubble sets that begin, there's a different way of actually starting the bubbles, because they've got, you know, Claudia's measured up all of the differences in stitch count so that it weighs up nicely and mirrors well. So I'm not sure whether the bubbles will work in my repeat for the extra rows, but I'm really enjoying it. It's quite a interesting yarn. It's quite dry, and I haven't washed or used the Stanley cake before in this variety, Muffin Fresh. I've used their Merino 2000, which was a lovely yarn, and that was really soft. As the name suggests, it was a wool yarn, and I liked working with that. It had lots of spring. This is a different type of yarn. It's more dry, and I think when I wash it, it might soften up a little bit. But for all of the stitch work and such that I'm doing here, I'm really liking the definition of the stitches that show up. I'm using a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook, and it's all metal. It's a Susan Bates all metal hook. So I'm enjoying that, and I have, as I said, just over a third of the way I've completed. And I'll just show you what the pattern looks like here. It's in black and white. That's it there. Sorry, it's not very good to see everything. The next work that I've got to showcase, you may have seen a few times before me mention it. I've been working on this for 3 months. It is quite a big project, and I'm taking you along the way every step, and I'm happy to say that it's almost done. But it is my version of the Nature's Walk by Sandra Paul. It's a crocheted blanket, and this is what I have so far completed. All the squares are done. They're all blocked, and I've crocheted them all together. I'm now doing the edging, and then there will be a border on that edge. So check it out. Holy smokes. Oh, that's a beautiful thumbnail just there. So what can I say about this make? This pattern is amazing. I have so much fun, so many hours of fun. I got addicted to doing these squares, and I'm still randomly making them. So every once in a while, when I have a few minutes, I will pick up one of the square patterns and I will start crocheting it, because it's easy to transport the squares, that is, not the blanket. But when you want to fill in an hour of lunch or whatever, you take one of the patterns with you and you can do a square. I just think it's a neat way of crocheting your craft wherever you are. So the idea behind this make for me was that I was using economic yarns, and I was practicing to experiment what kind of yarns were out there. I purchased them from 3 or 4 different locations: Hirschner's, Wool Warehouse, Michael's. So I bought a few different value yarns from collections that are well known and some that are new, and I wanted to get an idea of how they all worked up together. So in my discovery of that hunt for the economic yarns, I learned that willow yarns, which is this one here called Rise, it's a cotton acrylic blend. This was one of my favorite yarns to work with. It just glided off my hook. When I say economic, this yarn was probably in the vicinity of $3.99 when I purchased it at discount. I think regularly it's probably around $6. So not as economic as some people might consider economic yarns, but I tried to keep under $5 for my economic yarns, and a lot of them were around the $2.80 to $3.50 mark. And I think that that gets a shout out because that was a wonderful yarn to work with, and I loved the colors and how each ball did gradate from a lighter tone into a more richer tone, and it had some sort of tonal value, a weatheredness to it. It's chain constructed as well, so it had a different feel when I was working with it, as opposed to the other 100% acrylic yarns. Yeah, and I am bordering it right now, edging it, and then there will be a border, and I'm using a yarn that I purchased on discount, which were sold in packs from Hirschner's, packs of 3, called the 2-ply Classic Afghan. So it's actually not a 3-weight at all, it's a 2-weight, but I'm really liking that to get in those tight stitches, the lighter weight is doing a fantastic job, and I am liking the edging as well. It's not bulking up too much. Yeah, so that's the single crochet join method, and the back is flush. There's no yarn coming through there on the borders. It's just the squares butting up towards each other. And the Hirschner's yarn that I'm using, the 2-ply Afghan yarn, it is a bit splitty. It's probably my least favorite out of the whole assortment of yarns that I used, but I do like the color, and with a bit of carefulness with the crochet hook, even though I am sort of like, you know, taking my time to get around the yarn so I'm not piercing it and fluffing it up, it's coming out quite nice. So if you like crocheting fast and you like a yarn that sort of doesn't split, then maybe the Hirschner's 2-ply yarn is not the best option to go with. But for price point and the color choice, as well as the look of it, it sort of sits between a sheen and a buff kind of yarn. Not a buff, but a dull and a sheen. I do like the look of it. I love this. So what I'm going to do, I did use my 3.5mm Susan Bates all metal hook as well for this project, and I am going to now insert a picture or two, if I can find them, of this laid out so that you can see all the different wonderful squares, and I'll tell you a bit more about the pattern when we get back. Hopefully I found some pictures and you've got to see them just before this part of the video. But I wanted to come back and talk more about the pattern because I think that this was just a generous offering from Sandra Paul. Now, Sandra Paul is the designer of Nature's Walk, and the first iteration of this was for a make-along, and it was a free pattern offering up 6 of the motifs or 6 of the square designs. It is quite an extensive pattern. You get to see charts like this one here. It's in written form as well. And you've also got some color suggestions. If you get stuck on color, you can kind of like use some of the color varieties here on this color palette. And it gives you arrangement of the squares as well as technique photographs on how to do your joining along the way. So it never leaves you astray. to figure it out on your own. It's well extensive. Now, the other part to this is that you can get a bonus bundle square pattern, which is a paid for section, and you get another 6 designs. So these designs are all centered around like a nature's walk. So when you go outside, you might see budding flowers, or you might see a starburst or a sun rays, butterflies, or blossoms. There are wonderful ideas behind each of the motifs, and I thought it was a great adventure and a great story to tell when I was making each of these squares. I can see myself doing another one of these, and now that I have all 12 squares from the free pattern and from the bonus bundle, which is paid for, I now can pick and choose where I want to put my designs. I have more designs to use in my blanket. I'm thinking about going bigger. So the setup for this blanket and the bonus bundle blanket is 8 rows of 6 columns. And I had done 10 rows of 8 columns. So my one is a bit bigger. And I think I want to do my next one to be something more of the way of 8 rows by 14 columns, just to get that extra length. But I've chosen my colors as well, so I'm super happy about that. And as I mentioned before, maybe not, I don't know, because I'm going to be editing some of this out, that I love to take a ball of yarn with me and a pattern of one of the 12 that I have and work on them. So here's one here. This ball of yarn was, what did I use? I think it was this one, Sage. Are you Sage? No, you're not Sage. You must be Sage. Are you Sage? Yes, this is Sage. So I took this ball. It's James C. brought one day with me to work, and at lunchtime I produced one of the squares, which is in the bonus bundle, and it's called Wheat. And then I had other squares. In the process of also making a pillow slip, which has the same colors as, and a few more, of the blanket that I have made for the Nature's Walk. And this one here, which is the blossom. Sorry, that one is it blossom or is it flower? It's either blossom or flower. This one's called Buds. This one's called Star. Berries. This one is called, I think it's called Leaves. I think it's called Leaves. So do a few of those. This one is called Gate. And then I've got repeats of all the other ones. So I'm still going to make them here and there wherever I can, and make pillowcases with the odd ones out that don't make it into blankets. But I do have a box of yarn for the next big one that I'm making. Yes. So call me addicted. I'm definitely addicted to that pattern. So now I'm going to move on. I don't know whether this is going to get into the video, but if I have time, I want to really talk about this work too, because I absolutely love it. And it is in my craft journal where I sketched out some things I wanted to do for a sweater vest hoodie. And I wanted to use the Celtic cable and some of these honeycombs. I think they're called honeycomb cables. And so it is worked in the round. And that's the inside of all of the stitch work. And that's the outside. And it has the same design. So it's mirrored as it goes around. So I've got the Celtic knot on the front and the back in the center, and then it's flanked with these 2 honeycomb cable, I think it's called. And the reason why I'm picking it up now to talk about it is because originally on my side panels I had a 10 stitch count here on either side of the garment that I wasn't happy with. I had tried to create a texture that wasn't looking like what I was learning. It had passes with stitching your needle work through the row below, and it didn't look like anything much to me, and it didn't resemble what I was trying to replicate. So nice thing about knitting is that between the two markers here, those 10 stitches, I just unraveled between those. So I had all these loose rows of yarn just puckering out, and I took it all the way down to the ribbing, and I re-knit that section, and I did the basket weave stitch, which is I chose to do 2 by 2 ribbing and alternating every 4 rows. So there were basket weave strap bits. They look a little bit loose, but I was working with the yarn that I had already worked with, and whether or not I used every ounce of that yarn or whether it's quite a loose fabric, I didn't mind because I did like it. And the other side, I chose something different. I just did ribbing. So I did a 1 by 1 ribbing for the other side of the 10 stitches between the stitch markers here. That's my starting point there. Yeah, so I wanted to bring it up because I was fascinated that with knitting, I always thought the reverse, that crochet was so much friendlier in the fact that, you know, if you were to drop a couple of stitches, it didn't matter because you were working in a row that sort of like only had one live stitch in the end for most parts of your crochet. But with knitting, you have multiple live stitches. But the thing I like about knitting now from doing that is I didn't have to sacrifice all that work with doing cables. I could change a mistake from down below, or a series of 10 stitches in this case, and just re-knit. I think it was probably around 35 rows, and change my mind, try something else, but I didn't have to rip it back. And granted that your stitch would be restricted to whatever yarn was in between those two markers. You couldn't do anything too crazy or too, I guess, out of the range of what yarn was there, because you might have tighter stitches then, or you might even have looser stitches where the work would look a little uncomfortable, or the stitch work would be different tension. So yeah, I had to pick and choose what I wanted to change it to, but I thought that was a brilliant idea to do, especially when I didn't want to rip it all out and start again from scratch. So yeah, I'm using a yarn that was gifted to me by my good friend Crystal over at Bag a Day, and for this sweater vest, I'm using the Croft, and it's from Shetland Islands. It's 100% Shetland Island wool, and the colorway I think is called Rolling Hills. Yes, and that's what it looks like in the hank. Absolutely love it. It's very, very woolly and rustic, and it's going to be wonderful and warm for Canadian winters. I'm using a 5mm set of Chargu knitting needles, and I believe my circumference, this is the interchangeable set, is the cable I think might be around 36 inches. So with the tips of the 4-inch tips, it's probably around 8 and 36 is like almost like a 42 kind of circumference set of knitting needles. That concludes what I got to talk about for the crafting part of this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed the content. Now I'm going to shift gears and talk about what I've been up to in this community with my husband and puppy Pixel. We've been doing a lot of things which also involve yarn acquisitions and also tools for my craft. So if you are still here and want to continue watching, please do. You're more than welcome. But if you need to get on with your day because you've got important things to do, I understand. I want to thank you for joining in this far into the video, and I'll see you next time. So what's been going on here? It's been 3 weeks of whirlwind adventure. We've been to a couple of festivals. We've had a parade here, and Puppy Pixel has done some wonderful things as well, which I'll get to, and maybe can share some photographs as well along the way. So I'll talk to you first about my first festival that I went to, and it's called the Filberg Festival in Comox. You pay to get in, and there's all different artisans. They have performers, they have some food trucks. It's well attended, and I heard about it when I first came to the island, that the Filberg Festival was something to go and see. But it was my very first time going, and I absolutely enjoyed it. So in the way of crafting for yarn, there were a couple of vendors that made products or items that they were selling to the public, but there was only one store that sold yarn, and I spent lots of time talking to the proprietor or the owner, the maker of this yarn, whose name is Catherine. I had a very good talk with her. So Catherine had so many interesting stories for me, and I could have listened to her all day. It was her passion that drew me into understanding and loving her yarn that she both picked herself, gleaned, her connections to other mills where she got it all milled, and then how she dyed it here in our neighborhood of Campbell River. I absolutely loved all the stories, and I want to say thank you for sharing your passion with your yarn, and I feel the love in these hanks that I purchased from her. So again, it is called the Small Bird Workshop, if I haven't shown that already. And these are all on the same base of yarn. So we'll take this one here and take a look at it. It is called 100% Vancouver Island Romney DK. It is a little rustic. I'm going to say that out of 5, this is probably a 2.5 for softness. And I wouldn't wear this against my skin on its own. I probably would wear an undergarment with it just to stop the pinch or the itch from being directly against my skin. It is 3-ply, so it's a DK weight yarn. And in this 100 gram hank, I'm getting 235 yards or 215 meters. It is in the colorway Vespa. It cost me $32. And I absolutely love it. It's got that denim look to it. All these colors are going to go together in a project. Same specs for this one here. The colorway is called Ice Storm. Another great color. I think I love that one. That's probably my favorite. And this one here is called Dark Matter. And all together, they work up, or they're going to work up into a color work project. And I think that's going to just be amazing. Absolutely love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I have some footage of the visit to the Filberg that I'll include here, and I'll be back to you for the next festival that we went to. Okay, the next festival we went to, I think, was the following weekend, if not maybe 2 days later. I'm not too sure. There was a long weekend in there somewhere. And it was called Nautical Days. Again, this was in Comox by the wharf, only around maybe a kilometer away from the Filberg Festival where that was held. So we managed to get down there. They had a classic car show. I don't know, maybe there was around 50 cars there, from hot rods to convertibles, and then we had gangster cars. It was wonderful. We enjoyed it a lot. They had food trucks there and some games for kids like rides and bouncing castles, and then they had a whole section as well of craft stores. So we went walking through the crafts areas and we absolutely enjoyed it. Did I buy anything? I don't think I did buy any crafts in that on that day, but we really enjoyed it. And we didn't know anything about it. We just heard that there was a festival. Let's go and take a look. But the reason why it's called Nautical Days is that they have their annual race. It's called Build a Boat, and they get an hour and a half. Competitors get an hour and a half to build their boat, and they have 2 people on a team. They've got to paddle the boat across the water to a buoy and go around it and come back. The first one to ring a bell when they get back to the start and finish point, they're the winners of the race. It was just so fun to see all these wacky boats, and there were costumes, and it was wonderful. So we had a good time watching that. What else was there? I think that's all I have to say about that, but I do have some footage of that, so take a look. I'll include it here. I forgot to tell you one story on our walk to the Filberg Festival that I should mention. I always get excited to pass one of our local yarn stores, which is in Comox, and I'm running up to the window normally and I'm looking through to see what's new there. I love their window display. So when we were passing by, I noticed that there was nothing in the window, and then on closer inspection, there was a shell of a store inside. They had no furniture, all their product had been taken out, and I was really super sad. I thought, have they just moved? I don't see any signs. And then at the Filberg Festival, I did ask a couple of the yarn people from the wool gathering whether they knew of what happened to the store. So the story goes, they were telling me that the owner was retiring, tried to sell the store or the goods, everything, probably part and parcel together, to someone who would take it over, and there were no takers, so the store had to close down. It was super sad, and now there's one less outlet for people like me who love to buy and shop or even go into squish yarn. We don't have one of the outlets for that therapy session that I love going to. So I'm not sure. I'm thinking maybe there's a window there of a chance for another store to prop up, because I think the valley here that I live in, there are a lot of creators, a lot of yarny people, and there was a calling for that because they held clubs there. They sat down and they were doing lots of different gatherings of people. So I don't know, I think there's an opportunity. I wish I just had more money, and I would have totally, had I known, I would have jumped at the chance of helping out, and I don't know whether I'd be a very good yarn store owner, because I think I would probably use most of the products. And it brings me to the next event that we went to, which was quite a historic one here for us in our little community. We had our first Pride Parade. It was 12 or so walking groups. Some of them had vehicles, very colorful. They all got dressed up. There were sporting organizations, teachers. There were some commercial franchise as well, like some banks and stuff like that that were included as well. And I just enjoyed watching the procession. It took around 13 minutes or so to go past us, And it's something that we're not used to, because when we're in Vancouver and we see a Pride Parade there, it goes on for 4 hours. And then there's big gaps in between, because I guess the procession of dancers and all that sort of stuff takes its toll on like separating, and sometimes it's not very organized. But this one was very organized, and it was well attended. We had about 1,000 viewers and audience partakers that were cheering on at the sidelines. It culminated in a park where there were other vendors that were selling their wares, and there were food trucks, and again, a lot of colorful people. So me and Chad went down there and we walked the stalls, and I bought some yarn from the other second yarn store that we have here, was Uptown Yarns, and I have it here somewhere, but I'll show that in another show in town, because this is getting a little too long. But I will promise to show that yarn, and I also have a surprise package that arrived from a YouTuber that I absolutely adore, and I want to show what was in that package. It touched my heart deeply. And I also bought a mystery bag of yarn from another YouTuber, and I'm super happy with what I received. Those will be in another video because it's getting quite long. That brings us to talk about what I've been watching and what I can suggest to watch on TV if you're looking for something to entertain you while you're crafting away. These are both on Prime for us in Canada. When I'm mentioning this, it might be also provided on a different service provider or platform where you are. But the first one is a movie. It's called The Whale. I think this one actually was not Oscar nominated for this year earlier. And I think Brendan Fraser was Best Actor, and he got the Oscar for it. The Whale, this is a description that I'm going to read from the Review Geek, which sums it up nicely. The Whale is a one-person play adapted for the silver screen by Darren Aronofsky, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, known for his surreal dramas, which we do see a hint of in this film. It follows a week in Charlie's life, a morbidly obese English teacher who realizes he is dying after he refuses to go to the hospital when he gets congestive heart failure. Instead, he tries to accept his fate, spends some time with his only friend Liz, has a discourse with a random missionary, and reaches out to his angry teen daughter whom he abandoned when she was young. That was from the Review Geek. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a well-presented movie, a great script, and amazingly delivered lines. I did mention to Chad that I got the feeling it was a stage performance because they never leave the apartment and the people come and go like they're entering on a stage. So that's something to be aware of if you are watching The Whale. The next one that I have is a series, and I believe we finished 2 of the seasons. It's called Fleabag, and it's on Prime, as I mentioned. And here is the review from Rotten Tomatoes, or Tomato. You say tomato, I say tomato. So, a dry-witted woman known only as Fleabag has no filter as she navigates her life and love in London while trying to cope with tragedy. The angry, grief-ridden woman tries to heal while rejecting anyone who tries to help her, but Fleabag continues to keep on her bravado through it all. Comic actress Phoebe Waller-Bridge stars as the titular character on the series, which is based on Waller-Bridge's 2013 one-woman show of the same name. That was from Rotten Tomatoes. So I hope that you enjoy some of those suggestions. If you've seen either of the movie that I mentioned or the series on TV, let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy them as well? Or did you have to build up kind of like a taste for them? I gravitated to The Whale. Fleabag, I had to start a few times to get into the mood, and then once I hit like episode 4 or 5 of the first series, I was hooked. And with that, that catches you up on everything. I hope you're doing well. It's getting quite late here, so I've got to stop this recording and go down and spend some time with Chad and with Pixel. But I'm super stoked that we got to share some time together. And yeah, I wanted to say that I hope that you are safe and staying well. And I will look for you in the next episode. Bye for now.